Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to tackle the thought of maybe two thoughts. I was going to do a stream on one of these topics, but I keep getting it really strong today, so I might just do it here. There's an old, I think it was a Gloria Estefan song, I don't remember. I don't remember, but it's the title, Words Get in the Way. And it was kind of running through my mind the other day, and sometimes that happens. With me, I never get the hook though of the song. I only get the, I'll get like some obscure lyric in the song, and then I'll have to go look up the song. And that's the way my universe kind of tells me, this is a little more important. This is a little important to go do your own due diligence and figure out, what we're talking about. And that's kind of what happened with this song. So it got me kind of on a bit of a rabbit hole, is how they do get in the way. And it's not they get in the way so much because of the words themselves, it's how we communicate the words and how the frequency we communicate with does not match the words we're saying. Very rarely in our human consciousness do they match. Because we're transmitting out so much stuff that is not clear to us when we are in our human consciousness. We don't understand we're doing that. We don't understand that we are transmitting out stuff through our field. We have no knowledge of that when we're in our human experience. We don't even have a concept of it. So we say a lot of shit. We say so much stuff that doesn't, and there's a lot of different sides to this. We say stuff we know we're never going to do, and we're just saying it to get out of the moment we're in, to gloss over something maybe that we have done or someone else has done that we didn't really like, so we kind of manipulate with words. But you can't manipulate with your energy field. And that is what starts to happen when you get through your certain parts of your ascension. You can no longer be manipulated because you stop listening to the words. You don't listen to the words anybody says because you know that they are not, it's not a language in a sense your soul understands. You see a lot of people who do what they call light language, and they'll speak in a certain, I guess I'll call it a dialect. And some people really resonate with it. Sometimes you don't. It really, it's not so much the light language itself. It's the person speaking it, because a lot of the frequency that their body's at taints the language. So if the frequency that they're at is higher than yours, you're going to get something out of it. If the frequency they are at is lower than yours, and not to judge who is where. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just to why sometimes you might hear light language and you go, wow, that's really amazing. And sometimes you might hear it and go, wow, that doesn't do anything for me. And then you'll hear people talking not in the specific dialect of which someone would call light language, but just their voice in general does it. And it will activate you, and they're not speaking that specifically. That's because it's the frequency they're speaking at is what's activating you. The codes they're transmitting through their tone. It's not the words they're saying. It has nothing to do with that, And that's why sometimes you will, you'll hear someone say one thing, and someone can say the same thing to you later, and all of a sudden it'll click or it'll register or something will unlock in you. Like, wow, I've never kind of heard it said that way. And what you mean by that is that frequency they said it at that's what got you. The words do not matter. They are kind of a waste of time. That's why you see a lot of people when they go through a lot of their soul journey, they stop talking a lot. They just don't have the need to do it. You kind of don't have the will to do it anymore, because it's kind of a waste of time. And so much of what our humans say, let me flip that. Humans get really attached to the words that get said because consciously that's all they get. They don't understand the subtext of the unconsciousness going on and the frequency of what they're saying, the frequency of what someone else is saying. They don't get that. They don't understand that. They don't understand any of that. It's like a secret ecosystem going on that the human frequency cannot read, and it's more focused on what the words say. So we get really pissed off when someone will say something and they won't do it, right? Just like what I was starting to go through earlier about there are different reasons we say certain things. And there's sometimes we knew we were not going to do it when we said it. We had intention of doing it, but we just never did. You know, but our intention was not to really mislead. It wasn't really a priority. You know, it wasn't really important. Words do not dictate priorities. Our energy dictates our priorities, and our energy dictates what's important, not the words we say. And that is why when you get into your ascended timelines, you stop really listening to the words people say. It's the frequency of which they're saying them that becomes more important, and that becomes the activator for you. It is not what anybody is saying. It doesn't matter. But in the human consciousness, they start to get in the way. And they get in the way in our human consciousness because we cling to what people say. You know, we want to believe it. We go to hear what we want to hear from people, well, because we know what they're going to say. You know, everyone has certain friend groups and they know certain people are going to say one thing, certain people are going to be softies, certain people are going to be hard asses, and if you need advice, you're going to go to the person that's going to say what you want them to say. Because that's what we need to hear, you know, and we want to have someone else to say, well, they told me to do that. It's a classic human consciousness thing. They told me to do that. I was just following their direction. I was just doing what they said to do. That's what we do as humans, right? Our human consciousness will always fall back on that. Once you get into your ascended timelines, you can't fall back on that anymore because you know the words mean diddly squat. People don't know what they're saying. They don't know the frequency they're transmitting. You know when someone's not telling the truth. And technically you knew in your human consciousness. You just didn't want to see it. You didn't want to be faced with it. You know, you were kind of trying to brush it under the rug a little bit in a sense. Like you didn't want to have to deal with it. You know, so you take a lot of things at face value, and 99.9% of things you take at face value do not happen because people are saying the words just to say the words, and they don't mean the words. And that is, you know, it's funny. I just listened to, I just watched the show Daredevil, and the new one, the one they just rebooted. And there's a big thing in there where he can tell if someone's lying because he listens to their heartbeat. He doesn't listen to what they're saying so much. He's listening to if their heart starts beating faster, if it's slowing down and they're talking, he can tell if they're telling the truth. That's kind of a different kind of take on it. But basically, you just start to read the field. You know, you start to take into account not the words, not the tone even in which the words are being said. Someone can say something in a really nice tone, and that will really throw off, you know, our human aspect for a long time. Because people can say stuff that can be really kind of shitty and not super respectful or nice, but if they say it in a nice enough cadence or tone, we don't quite take it the same way, right? Because of how it was said. And that becomes a big thing in our human consciousness for a while, is to, and it even moves into our ascended timelines on how you say certain things, how you deliver bad news, you know, how do you start off with a positive, then go to the thing you're trying to get to, and then end with something positive to kind of soften the blow. What I'm trying to say is buried in there somewhere, but you gotta kind of piece through it to see what I'm actually trying to say. All that starts to go away in our ascended timelines, with the exception of we pick our words very carefully because we know humans really pay attention to words. They hang on to them. They put a lot of stock in them. They put a lot of faith in them. They put a lot of truth in them, even if we shouldn't. You know, you can have a situation where someone can have basically, like I said, your actions show your priorities, okay? You don't have to get on there and tell anyone your priorities. Your actions show your priorities. It doesn't matter what you're saying. What you're doing is what's important. And it might just be what's important right now. a lot of time for us in our ascended timelines, it's what's important in that timeline. You know, some things are not as important in one timeline and in another timeline. And sometimes more things become important. Like this year, my timeline is more group work. That's more important. And getting certain parts of the house and the yard up to a certain frequency, shifting the frequency of certain things, planting new grass, you know, painting the home. Those things and group work were more important to me this year than individual work that I've done for years and years. That just in this timeline, that's more important. It feels more important. It just is more important. Trying to explain why it's more important, it's kind of a waste of energy, right? You don't have to. Humans say words because they want to express something. They want to convince somebody of something. You know, that's what we did when we would speak a lot and use a lot of words, because we're trying to sway someone to our side. We're trying to convince someone to listen to something we have to say. We're trying to convince someone that something we have to say is important. That's just what we do. It is not a personal, it's not a personal thing. A lot of times we take a lot of this stuff so personal in our human ego takes it personally. Even our ascended timelines, we still will take us a while to stop taking things people say personal and stop putting a lot of hope and prayer on something someone's saying when we know deep down they don't have the cojones to do what they say they're going to do. You know, they're not ready for their ascended timelines. They're not ready to jump off, to kind of jump into the what is kind of like the Indiana Jones walk of faith into your ascended timelines. They're not ready for that. And we know who's ready for that and who's not ready for that, because you can tell by what they're saying and how they're saying it and trying to hold on to part of their life. But then go ahead and I want all ascended timelines, but I don't want my life to shift or change. And we all go through that until we realize we can't have it both ways, and our life is going to shift and change, and sometimes all of relationships in general with that shift and change. There's no other way around that. There's no way to get around the amount of moving on that comes with ascended timelines and letting go of the human ones. I'm going to do a stream tomorrow about how everything we created in a human is kind of a red hot mess, right? It's an old saying, a red hot mess. And it's all a red hot mess. And there's some of the red hot mess you try to fix, some of the red hot mess you walk away from. But at the end of the day, it's all a red hot mess. And you can explain about the red hot mess and use a lot of words to describe the red hot mess. But at the end of the day, it is a red hot mess. And most of the time we get kind of tired of playing in the mess and trying to put it back together. It's like something that's just been mangled and broken 100 times, and you can't get it together. It's that old that scene in the movie, or I guess it was the TV show. I didn't watch the TV show, but I heard someone explaining this. I thought it was just hysterical about the wagon wheel and how I guess they're not hobbits, but I'm not sure what they were doing, but they kept dragging the wagon everywhere they were going, and it was slowing them down. They were, they couldn't get anywhere fast because this wagon, and they didn't even have that much stuff in the wagon. And this guy reviewing the show is like, burn the damn wagon. What are you doing? Just fucking burn the wagon and move on. This wagon is just a drain on you. And that's what we have to start to do. And that's what we will carry things around, and we will try to justify it. And even ourselves, for a while, our words get in the way because we're trying to convince ourselves of something that's not true. Like, we need all this stuff. We need to bring all this stuff with us. Everyone pile on. We're going this way. Everybody jump on my back. We're going to go over here. Let's go. And it just doesn't work that way. So when you start really you're going to be in a lot of different camps on where you are with this. When we talk about, we try to loop back around to human words and explaining something through words. You're going to find the words don't matter. You don't believe the words. It's the frequency they're saying it, and that's telling you everything you need to know. That's why before someone would say something and you would not believe them, you would feel a certain way. It was that old saying, oh, I knew better. Oh, I knew better. And some of that is because they repeated the same damn timeline again on you that you'd seen 100 times, and we've seen 100 times. They just did it all over again. That's some of that. And you knew from what they were saying, that's not how they really felt. And it can go a lot of different ways. Some people can pretend like they don't have feelings for you, but then their actions say something different, and the tone of which they say says something different. it doesn't always have to have a negative connotation that someone's, trying to mislead you in a, hurtful way. Sometimes it can go the other way too, but we start to pick up on all the nuances and everything, and things start to make more sense of motivations, of why people do certain things. Everyone, there's another old saying, a lot of old sayings today. There's another old saying that people tell you exactly who they are. We just don't want to believe them, right? We want to paint everybody as something else. And it's not so much people tell you. Their frequency tells you exactly who they are and what they're going to do. Someone's in their human consciousness, you know what they're going to do. When things get rough, and in ascension, things will get rough. That's the part of ascension. When things get rough, people are going to tuck and run. People are going to go the other way, sometimes try to go back to their human life because they don't want to deal with what's in front of them. There's a lot of reasons we don't hitch our wagon to people still in their human journey, because it's a road to nowhere. Because they're still trying to create human realities. We're not, and it just kind of sidelines us for a long time, and trying to explain it, and we use words. When you're talking to humans, that's that's what we have. You use words, and sometimes there aren't words, and sometimes you just don't even know what to say. And when you're in those places where you don't know what to say, know that nothing really has to be said, because your energy field and their energy field understands. It might not be conveying what you would like to say with your human consciousness. And that's when you get the mismatch. Our human consciousness wants to say one thing to avoid reprimand. It's not a word I usually use, but that's what I'm getting. It doesn't want to be reprimanded for anything. It doesn't want to be called out for anything. So it does lie, cheat, and steal, and it'll say all these things and kind of come up with, ways later and glorify things we said, or glorify the things we did to make it sound cooler than it was. Because it's our identity and it's our story, right? So no matter where you're setting on words, if they still mean something to you, if they don't mean anything to you, if you take it way too harsh, what people say, and you get angry, and there's also the caveat where people will get mad when people say and don't do, they take it all, like I said, super personal. When we know better, look at what the person's doing. That tells you everything you need to know. Beyond that, we're searching for something in the words that's never going to be there. We're searching for a ascended aspect to come through when someone's living from their human aspect and they're not in that place yet. But we want the ascended aspect, but we know we're dealing with the human aspect, which means we're getting all the words and the word salad and all the goobly gook in there that doesn't even make really any sense. And also, you'll notice it never answers the question you ask. And there's a part of that with ascension. You don't really answer the question somebody asks, because there's so many different answers to the question, that the frequency of your tone is going to unlock an answer for them, perhaps. Usually it will unlock something for them. And there's just no words to describe it. So you do your best, when you're talking about ascension, because it is the vastness of ascension. When you're talking about human consciousness, it's just more of a skirting through. And if you choose to believe someone in their human consciousness and they're talking to you, you're going to learn after a while to stop listening to the words. Don't pay any attention to the words. Just don't, even if if you're watching something, do your own kind of test. Watch something and put it on mute and just watch the actions of people, and do it on TV shows, do it on whatever, do it on home videos of people. Or you can be out in public and just watch people interact and not be able to hear what they're saying, and get an idea 100% of what's going on, even if the words they're saying are not depicting the picture you have of what's going on. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's, normally they're not even aware of what's going on. Because like I said, so much of this stuff happens on that unconscious level, because our human consciousness just cannot comprehend it. It's just not supposed to. So, okay, we're going to end it there. Keep practicing the art of intuition.